UN Security Council to have this independent commission of inquiry in the parliament about the situation of this minority in Iraq. It becomes even more interesting and pressing to deal with the issue as the foreign troops will go out of Iraq. Our focus today, however, is on the period after April 2003 and on human rights rather than on demographic.
In Parliament, this meeting transcends the work of the Subcommittee on Human Rights and is of a great importance to our colleagues in the Committee for Foreign Affairs and the delegations for relations with Iraq, amongst others. As Madame Lochbihler has outlined the background of unique value to Iraqi Turkmen and to those seeking to address the complex questions of property reparations, security, cultural autonomy, and power sharing that are central to the situation of Turkmen in Iraq. This experience comes from our ability for us to share our experiences. Just as I believe Turkmen and their compatriots can find inspiration from Europe and perhaps models to follow in their search for equitable solutions to the problems they face, so our centuries, and see very little future for them or their families in the short or medium term. It is important that these human rights be placed in the context of the contemporary Iraq, but that's international obligations. And
in the north of Iraq and the Kurdistan region, but from a security perspective, it's also important to note that the largest communities, religions and sects. Article 4 is the article about languages, and while it acknowledges that the only two official languages in Iraq at the statewide level are Arabic and Kurdish, it also makes provision that the Turkmen language and the Syriac language are two constitution in Article 125, perhaps the most
constitution and the legal framework. But we will hear all of our guest speakers and then open the floor. And now I'm glad and honored to introduce our next speaker, who is a colleague, a Turkmen nation, and the floor is yours now for 10 minutes.
Teşekkür ederim Sayın Başkan. Bizi buraya davet ettiğiniz için, buraya bu fırsatı verdiğiniz için size ve bu vesile olanlara teşekkür ediyorum. Halkımızın çektiği sıkıntıları, acıları sizlere burada aktararak Irak'ta daha güzel, daha iyi bir yaşam sağlaması için tabii ki katkılarınızı bekliyoruz. Konuşmamı kronolojik olarak 2003'ten beri başlamak istiyorum izin verirseniz. 10 Nisan 2003'te ABD rejimi değiştirmek, tırnak içinde Irak'a özgürlük getirmek amacıyla gerçekleşen operasyon neticesinde mevcut baskıcı, totaliter, tek parti istihbarat kılan aile rejimi çökmüştür. Bunun neticesinde totaliter bazı rejimlerin baskı aracı olan ordu ve güvenlik birimleri dağıtılmıştır. İleri tarihte bu dağılma sivil yönetici koyguya verdiği bir kararla resmileştirilmiştir. Belirsizlik ve güvenlik boşluğu nedeniyle devlet kurumlarında çözülme meydana gelmiştir. Devlete ait araç, gereç ve en önemlisi devlet arşivleri yağmalanmıştır. Bağdat'ta yönetim boşluğu ve belirsizlik yağmalama olaylarına can ve mal güvenliğinin ortadan kalkmasına neden olmuştur. Özellikle Türkmenlerin yaşadığı Kürdistan bölgesinde bitişik yerleşik yerlerden daha önce alınan kararlara ve anlaşmalara aykırı olarak silahlı güçler giderek idari birimlere el koyarak yönetimlerini kurdular.
I expect that outflow of Iraqi Turkmen will continue beyond the key events or major conflicts in the country. And therefore, we don't know the actual size of displaced Iraqi Turkmen within and outside Iraq. Finally, I would like to say that long-term hostilities and conflicts between ethnic and religious groups in Iraq are flourishing on the political system, which is largely based on ethnic and religious divisions.
We've heard rather, for me, rather worrying messages some slightly more hopeful messages. I've heard a number of speakers, including, of course, Mr. Usman, with his description of the long-standing discrimination and suffering and the plight.
Nog een referendum worden hierover. Voor zover ik weet is dat nog altijd niet uitgevoerd. Is dat dan toch nog een hangende zaak of niet? Of hoe ziet u dat in de toekomst? En tenslotte voor wat de IAS betreft, excuseer, had ik graag willen vragen.
The Americans are leaving at the end of this year and are telling the world that they're leaving behind a functioning democracy. That this is a model for the rest of the Middle East and the Arab Spring to follow. Indeed, when I was in Baghdad in April, some of the government ministers said to me, the Arab Spring is a reaction to the freedom and democracy that we have achieved here. They want it in the rest of the Middle East. Well, I have to say, God help the Middle East if they achieve the functioning democracy the Americans have left behind in Iraq. We've just heard of another 16 people killed today. The security situation is dire.
We have now some questions, but I would also like to welcome representatives of the Iraqi embassy here in Brussels. We have with us Madame Ivan Kioka, chargé d'affaires, and because of the time, I would ask you to be very brief to what you have to say, and then we can have a round of answers.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. The country of multiple nationalities, religions, and sex. In Article 4, the Constitution ensures the right of all Iraqis to educate their children in their mother tongue, such as Turkmen, Assyrian, and Armenian, in government educational institutions, and in any other language in private educational institutions.
Article 140, we haven't had it yet, or Article 140, it's long past the deadline. There needs to be genuine compromise on this issue.
Thank you, Professor Wolf, and now Mr. Ismail, but I really have to tell you, you have to be brief. Thank you.
Teşekkür ediyorum Sayın Başkan. Şimdi 140. maddeye gelince hanımefendinin sorduğu soru 140. madde 3 aşamadan oluşmaktaydı. Birincisi normalleşme, birinci aşama. İkinci aşama nüfus sayımı, üçüncü aşama referandum. Ancak henüz birinci aşamadan ikinci aşamaya geçilmedi.
Okay, dear colleague,